If we voted for whoever gave the best ed, society would be better. I mean, probably. I don't think it's the best way to determine who our political leader is. But at the very least, like, it would filter out some selfish people. That being said, like, I don't know, I think I'm still kind of formulating my thoughts on, like, Pillow Princess Discourse. But I do think there's something to be said for, like... So, okay, for all the straight people in chat, or just anyone who doesn't know what the term Pillow Princess means, it's a term within the lesbian community to refer to a woman who, likes receiving oral sex, but refuses to give oral sex, right? And it's generally seen as a negative thing. The idea is, like, oral sex is pleasurable. So, being unwilling to provide it to your partner while you yourself want it is, like, hypocritical or bad or whatever. And I understand the mindset, right? Where that comes from, right? It's the idea of, like, you know, a greedy partner. And there is such a thing as, like, you know, selfish lover, where you're only interested in your own pleasure and not the partner's pleasure. And that is a bad thing. However, I don't think that inherently labeling the act of performing oral sex on someone as something that is only pleasurable for the person receiving and not the person giving is necessarily accurate. I think that there are plenty of people, myself included, who enjoy providing that sort of service to their partner, right? And I think that I get where I get where the mindset comes from of, like, well, you should be willing to do labor to please this person that you love, right? But I also think, like, we sort of run the risk of, isn't sex supposed to be, like, consent? All based around enthusiastic consent, right? And so I think just in the same way that pressuring someone into having sex at all is something that I would find objectionable, I think that the sort of societal pressure that you need to be willing to perform this sex act, this specific act, or you're a bad lover, right? You're selfish lover for inherently not wanting to be the person who gives oral sex, but wanting to be the person who receives oral sex. I don't think that's great. You know, I can see where it originates from, but if you break it down like that, it sounds a lot worse, right? To me, it kind of feels like, and we're gonna get into kink stuff now, if, you know, if you have two people together, right, who are both into, let's just say, rope, because that's a very easy one to describe the two sides of. But one person is into rope, and they like tying people up, and the other person likes being tied up, right? Are you then gonna say, hey, you, person who likes being tied up, you know that's an easier job than tying people up, right? Which is true. You just kind of gotta lay there. Whereas the other person has to learn knots, has to do, you know, a large amount of the labor. Therefore, the fact that you prefer this role and not that role, that's the bad role. You're a selfish lover. You're a lazy lover, right? I think that some of it also comes from the idea of, like, it being a position of shame. to provide oral sex, whether it's to a man or a woman. And a lot of that is tied into gender stuff, right? The idea of, like, you know, cocksucker being something you call someone who you think poorly of, right? And sort of the old-fashioned, I don't think it's a thing that people think anymore, but there was an old-fashioned idea that, like, you shouldn't, as a man, like, in a heterosexual relationship, perform oral sex on a woman. Anyone watch The Sopranos, one of the greatest shows of all time, Uncle Junior, like, that is the moment where he loses his power, when it's revealed that he ate out this woman because he loved her, right? Because it's seen as unmasculine, it's seen as a sign of weakness. And so I think that, you know, I'm not gonna say that, like, that is the only thing where Pillow Princess Discourse comes from, because I do understand the logic, right? I get how people come to the conclusion that, like, laying there and receiving, but not being willing to give is bad. Because, like, when you phrase it like that, it sounds reasonable. But I do think a lot of the attitudes that we have around oral sex, whether it's in a straight couple, a gay couple, or a lesbian couple, or anything in between, you know, we are not isolated from the effects of society, and I do think that the sort of attitude around oral sex does tie into that. Sopranos did that, it was a weird thing. I want to be clear, I'm not criticizing The Sopranos for that. I do not think that the writing team of The Sopranos endorses that level of toxic masculinity. The Sopranos itself is about toxic masculinity and the ways it hurts not just women, but men especially, because most of its titular characters are men, and they are frequently hurt by the machismo of the mob, right? Which is a very hyper-violent form of toxic masculinity, but it is one, right? And it's about, I think that's one of the great things in the show is, you know, it's a lot like Hector's plot in Fire Emblem 7, comparing two things that shouldn't be compared. But I do think that, I do think The Sopranos is a great sort of, deconstruction of toxic masculinity stuff. It's also just a really good show. It's got more than just, it's not just about toxic masculinity, you know, the mental health, crime, the decay of the American dream. Like, it's framed through, like, the good days of the mob are over, but it's kind of about how the good days of the American dream are over, too. Which we see in Artie, right? Like, Artie is not a member of the mob, even though he has ties just because he's Tony's friend and Carmela's friend. But he's not a mobster, but he's sort of undergoing the same the world isn't cut out for people like us anymore arc that everyone in the show is. I remember when I first watched it, I thought the Artie stuff was kind of boring because he's not actually tied into the mob. But I do think it's, like, it works really well in the larger themes of the show. I need items. Sopranos is just a good-ass show. I haven't watched it in a while. I recently finished a rewatch of Better Call Saul. And I'm considering a rewatch of Breaking Bad, but now that I'm talking about The Sopranos, I kind of want to rewatch that instead. Oh, we're almost there. We're almost there. No! Oh, silver.